Welcome to the No Cams Podcast. I'm Sunny G.
I'm Akash.
I'm Jason, and here on the No Cams Podcast, we talk about movies, TVs, variety of other fun topics. But today we're going to get into Westworld Season 2, Episode 4, titled The Riddle of the Sphinx. Well, I'm going to throw it over to Akash. What were your thoughts on this, Akash?
Yeah, man, I love this episode. This is by far my favorite episode of the season. If you're up to me, this comment will probably bite me in the ass, but I would go through and delete episodes 1 and 2 and start with 3 as episode 1, and this is episode 2, because the first 2 were just useless and pointless. It was basically just a slaughter. That's what we watched. But besides that, the story here was what I love about Westworld. You really get into, the Man in Black's character, which I really am intrigued by. That whole plot line has got me super intrigued. Not to mention the storytelling this episode is really awesome and well done. And the cinematography is probably my favorite to date on the show. So I loved it.
So Sonny, what'd you think, man?
No, I like the idea of replacing the first 2 episodes with these last 2.
Yeah,
I definitely think that this episode was the best of the season so far. But I'm still holding out for the story to develop a little bit more. I was definitely more intrigued and more engaged, but I'm just waiting to get hooked.
Because this is what we fell in love with in season 1. This kind of story, this kind of storytelling, and it's back to that, which is great.
Yeah, that's what I loved about the episode too. I mean, it felt like it was from season 1. You know, this would fit right back into season 1 in its storytelling, and at least for me, it kept me questioning the whole time. I kept wondering, and that's what I love about Westworld. You know, and I like that the story's moving into this direction. That's not just these hosts trying to become conscious. It's something else that we're going to get into in this episode. But I really like that, and yeah, I agree with the replacing the first 2 episodes. The only thing is I hated episode 3. That's been my least favorite so far. But I still agree. This should be the beginning point. This should be the launching point for us. And I want just the whole season to be about the stories that they introduce in this episode. I really, really like this. I really like this episode. But the title of the episode is The Riddle of the Sphinx. So I looked up the Riddle of the Sphinx. And if you're not familiar with what the Sphinx is this mythological creature that has a head of a human, the body of a lion, and wings, and would sit outside of Thebes and ask travelers a riddle. And if they answered the riddle correctly, they could pass into Thebes. If not, they would get eaten. So Sphinx famously asks Oedipus, which creature has one voice and yet becomes 4-footed and 2-footed and 3-footed? And Oedipus answers correctly, man, who crawls on all 4s as a baby, then walks on 2 feet as an adult, and then uses a walking stick in old age. So that's the famous riddle. But there's also a second riddle that is apparently less common in texts, but I think is also really interesting. And the riddle is there are 2 sisters. One gives birth to the other, and she, in turn, gives birth to the first. Who are the 2 sisters? And I know we contemplated about it, but the answer is day and night. And so I kind of want to keep that in the back of our heads and think, which one of these 2 riddles, or what sense can we make out of these riddles as it applies to this episode in the show?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So getting right into it. Scene 1. We open on a record player playing 60s music that's panning over this really trendy looking room. And we see a man exercising on an exercise bike who it's revealed to be Jim Delos. We see him go through his morning routine, which apparently includes jerking off every morning and making a cup of coffee. So we see him pouring the cream into the coffee, and it spills onto the table. And he just simply watches it fall onto the table. A woman appears on this mirror screen behind him and says that someone's here to see him, and it's William. So Jim greets William by saying, "William, my boy." And Jim walks in with a bottle of whiskey, and they pour the bottle of whiskey, and Jim offers William a glass, and William says, "Nah, it's a little too early for me." Jim replies, "It's a little fucking late, you mean? Besides, if you aim to cheat the devil, you owe him an offering." Mm-hmm. They begin to talk, and William says that the observation period is almost over, and the final step is a baseline interview. which apparently has already begun. He asks Jim a couple questions, and Jim begins to look a bit agitated. William says that they're basically trying to establish a baseline of fidelity. And Jim basically says that that's a far-fetched idea, and William places a piece of paper in front of Jim, who looks very surprised when he opens and reads it. So that was the opening scene. What did you guys think of that?
I thought it was a very nice, well-done scene. It reminded me a lot of Breaking Bad, where they would juxtapose these kind of like these scenes and settings against each other, where it's like this white room, they play this certain type of music and feel this certain type of mood, and you really have no idea what to expect. And then when you get into the scene, it really grabs you and pulls you in, and I loved the scene. I kind of already had a hint that this is what they were playing at, just based on some of the theories that I had for the show. But I really enjoyed the scene and the interactions with William and his father-in-law. And I know we complimented the actor who played Abernathy, but man, this dude does a great job of glitching as well. But that is really well done.
I didn't like. I felt like they said a lot without really saying anything, because it's not the content of what they said that matters, but the context and like which gets revealed later, right? So when I watched it, I was like, okay, it's weird that he's in this room. I wonder if this is like his special nursing home or whatever. But that's all I really took away from the scene.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought that too. What is it, a nursing home? Is he in a psych ward? It's just, especially when William kind of walks in. But yeah, towards the end of the scene, it's like you're putting things together, and that's what they do so well in the show. That's what the show did so well in season 1, is it just like these slow reveals, even in this one scene. It's just like your opinion of it changes, and by the end, at least for me, I was like, oh my god, this is coming true. What Akash was predicting is maybe coming true. And so it was exciting, and so like I said, kept you questioning like right from scene 1. Now I have to know what happens. So we enter into scene 2, and we see the man in black riding with Lawrence. And they stumble upon this town that we see these Asian workers building a railroad, and they're using hosts as like the cross beams. The man in black says that the railroad is supposed to be heading north, not west, and that they have to head for Las Mudas, which is the town where Lawrence's family is. Then we see Clementine dragging Bernard, still from episode 3, just dragging Bernard and leaves him at the base of a cave, just leaves him with a gun. He enters in the cave to find Elsie chained up. He frees Elsie, and she grabs a gun and turns it on Bernard. And Bernard tries to explain what's happened since she's been kidnapped. And he basically pleads with Elsie to fix her. And she's just completely stunned by the fact that he's a host. And she kind of reluctantly helps him. As she shuts him down to reboot him, he has visions of being back at this Delos bunker with those drone hosts. Bernard suddenly wakes up in LCA and asks Elsie, is this now? They realize that he needs cortical fluid. Bernard tells Elsie that nobody is going to be rescuing them. And as he does, he sees a vision of his past life entering the cave, and says that he thinks Ford sent him there for a reason. And he finds the entrance to the cave that he says he can't remember what it is. But the facility turns out to be a lab that prints these control units with these dead technicians laid out. And Bernard gets snapped back into an old vision again as Elsie shoots down this drone that's looking over that's about to attack her. So what did you guys what were your thoughts on that, or how did you kind of react to that scene, or this kind of beginning of the storyline for Bernard?
Well, just going back a little bit, I thought that scene with the railroad was just kind of violent for violence sake, with them using human bodies as the base layer for the railroads. I don't know. It just was. I didn't really see the why show that.
Wait, were those humans or were those hosts?
They were hosts, yeah. But
I think it's hard to tell.
Yeah. I just don't understand the reason to show that excessive violence. I don't know what really played to the story overall in general. Yeah. But jumping forward, I really loved the interaction between Bernard and what's her name, Elsie. Yeah, that whole reveal, the way it was all set up and shown to us was beautifully done, in my opinion. Just like a quick question: what is the timeline between the last time we saw her disappear to this point? Has it been a couple weeks? It can't be too far, right? in between?
Yeah, so this is the like recent past timeline. This isn't the current timeline, right? So this isn't like right because like we said in the first couple episodes, they've kind of established this like 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks later. So this I think is like the 2 weeks ago timeline, and so that means that the park was just overrun only days ago by the hosts, and she gets captured. Like, you know, not mid-season, but like I'd say like episode 5 or 6, right? Like around there. So
Which
I mean, this is
mid-season, right?
I guess it's true. Yeah,
A little past mid-season.
That is a little past mid-season, right? And yeah, so what is that? That'd be like a couple weeks only, right? Because
I feel like I mean she's got a poop bucket and
protein
rations.
bars. So
Yeah.
well, and ketchup packets. She was like surviving off of ketchup packets.
Is that what it was? Ketchup?
That's what it looked like.
Yeah, exactly.
It looked like ketchup packets.
yeah, but back to that scene. I love the whole set design of that scene.
The cave.
The cave. I'm also really starting to appreciate those droid-like humanoid beings. Those things are pretty badass.
The drones.
Yeah, in a kind of a scary way. I'm kind of liking those things. I just like the concept art behind them a lot, and the execution of well, you see how they execute the humans. It's just their super strength and everything. So I don't know. I thought it was done. It was a pretty well done scene, especially mixing in his flashbacks and them also revealing to us that his code is so scrambled that he's not able to decipher what's now and what's in the past. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's adding like a really like legitimate storytelling device, which we already kind of saw with Dolores from season 1, which I guess is why it feels so familiar, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting to now have like an explanation for what it means, like in the context of being a host, and how they, kind of flirted with like showing what happened last time he was there. Also trying to, I think that suggests that he was there near the end of season 1, like after he had already, maybe before he had tied up Elsie, but like significantly before the dinner party and stuff, right?
Right.
And shit started going down. Yeah. So I also liked how they were bringing in more of what's going on, or what was going on behind the scenes during season 1, in these kind of pseudo flashback scenes. Yeah.
Yeah, I just love that the line is this now, you know, because that is exactly what Dolores says to William when she's beginning to malfunction, you know, and he's kind of struggling too. And it was kind of like the catalyst, like the recognition that they don't know what time it is kind of like the catalyst for her to kind of become conscious, so to speak. So I wonder if that's kind of, like you said, like they're just kind of using a familiar trope from season 1 to kind of introduce this idea or kind of spark, you know, Bernard's arc in the season. So just that kind of storytelling, those kind of little dialogues that I love that they do that so well in the show. You know, it gets me thinking, you know. And
the actor who plays Bernard does a really good job. Although we've kind of traveled with him through this whole story, I find myself finding it very hard to trust his character just based on some of the way he's been emoting in these scenes with Elsie. I think she's a fool to trust him and to let him carry the gun. I think that is a big mistake on her part. So we'll see where that goes. But the acting in the scene, they bounce off each other really well, in my opinion.
I mean, they definitely set him up to be an ambiguously trustable character, right? Given how much they showed us of what was going on in the quote unquote future in episode 1. So like, with that in mind, I'm not surprised that we find him so difficult to know whether we should trust him or not. And at the same time, it's a bit obnoxious to me because he plays the character so like, I guess like on the line, vaguely kind of
detached.
Yeah, exactly. That it's almost grating. I'm just like, come on, Bernard, like just give me something of whether like we can trust you or not. Like I want to care more about him, but I feel like it's hard to do that when I don't know where he stands and what his bigger role is.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what's interesting about that actress who plays Elsie? She reminds like that character would fit in like CSI Miami or something. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know why, but it seems very like cable TV show acting. Which I guess isn't entirely bad, but she always sticks out to me. Like she you could tell she's acting for some reason.
I thought you were gonna go with the girl who plays Juno or whatever. I don't know why.
Ellen Page.
Oh yeah,
make a comparison to Ellen Page. Yeah. That's what I thought too.
Yeah, there is something there. Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so moving on to the next scene. We see the woman from the last episode, and she's being brought as a prisoner of the Lakota tribe. Lakota tribe. Whatever. I had the subtitles. I could actually see the name of the tribe. Anyways, so there's
the Feather Indians.
With the other, yeah, you said that. I didn't. But we see her being brought as a prisoner with other guests. And we get reunited with Ashley, who was the security guard from season 1 that got captured by the natives last season. This one native is talking to him, and she translates what he is saying. So she has some understanding of the language, and she tells Ashley that some people tend to ignore their narratives, and that she doesn't like other people. And Ashley assures her that she's going to be rescued, and she replies, "I'm not looking to get out of here."
Mm-hmm.
Then we see the Man in Black and Lawrence arrive at Las Mudas. The town is completely empty, and the two are sitting at a table that they sat in at season 1 when the Man in Black killed Lawrence's family. Mm-hmm. The bartender comes, and he shakily begins to pour the whiskey. The Man in Black stops him as he gets surrounded by a bunch of the Confederado men that Dolores resurrected and then betrayed in the last episode. Looking completely beaten up, the Man in Black asks what happened to the men. And the leader replies, "Got double-crossed by some bitch named Wyatt." Which Man in Black replies, "Good for her."
Good for her.
Which I loved. So then we see the men bring all the townspeople into this church, including Lawrence's family. They're terrorizing and shooting the townspeople looking for these weapons. And Lawrence tells the Man in Black that he's worried about his daughter, seeing him die, and says, "You told me you had a daughter once." And the Man in Black is surprised that he knows or remembers this. Mm-hmm. He tells the Man in Black where the weapons are, and the Man in Black then immediately devises a deal with those men, and he tells the leader that he knows where Glory is. Yeah, so what are your reactions to that? I know you guys really love the Man in Black and his storyline. I do too. So kind of just getting a little bit more into him. What did you guys think of the string of scenes and the scene with the woman? All right, so no, I really like those scenes. The woman, like you said in the last episode or our last podcast, Sonny, this woman seems to really know what's going on. She seems clued in, and she kind of displays that right here. I love that she knows what the natives are speaking, and I like how she says that people tend to ignore their narratives. Mm-hmm. I thought that was like a really powerful quote, and the fact that she's not looking to get out of here. So again, it's just kind of piquing my interest in who this woman is and why doesn't she want to get out. I thought that was cool. And I loved Lawrence, like recalling that the Man in Black had a daughter. Because if you go back, he doesn't tell him that in this storyline. Like this version of Lawrence doesn't know that. So we're seeing Lawrence kind of wake up, and I love Lawrence. He's one of my favorite hosts. So it's just exciting to see that development of his character.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there was also the subtle scene where Ashley, I think that's the name of the security guard. Right?
Yeah, Ashley.
There's a subtle knowing between each other where it's not overtly stated, but what we learn about her at the end of the show, there's a reason for him to know who she is. So I think there was a subtle connection between the both of them in that scene where they interact.
Oh, you think they recognize each other? I didn't really pick up on that.
I mean, she's a pretty important character, or a pretty important person within that universe.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. I didn't pick up on that, but that does make total sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, neither did I. But yeah, now they brought the guy back, the security guard, and so now we get to see what he's up to in the past, and hopefully that means we'll get to follow maybe some of what he does in between now and the present, because everybody seems to get split up and somehow come back together, and I think that's where the good story happens, is when you figure out exactly what kind of different adventures they went on and how they got back together.
Yeah, and seeing Elsie and Ashley in this episode also is kind of what makes you feel like season 1 again. We haven't seen them since season 1, so you're kind of wondering where they are. So it's we're back to the old characters, the old gang's back together.
Well, I had seen that she was killed, so I mean,
there was a lot of speculation, right? And there were a lot of people questioning, and I mean, all the Reddit theories. I forget what people were in general saying, but yeah, that was like the unanswered question from season 1: where the hell's Elsie?
But I guess Bernard just choked her out and locked her up, right?
Yeah.
Rather than a killer.
All right, so moving to the next scene, we see Jim again on the exercise bike. He's going through his morning routine. This time he's dancing to some music alone in his room. He briefly is looking at himself, and then he looks around the room, just really puzzled. He starts pouring the cream into his coffee again. This time his hands are very shaky. The woman appears on screen again and says he has a visitor. It's William again, and Jim once again greets him with, William, my boy. William has the bottle of whiskey and once again says it's too early, and Jim replies, if you aim to cheat the devil, you owe him an offering. Jim again says that they're looking for fidelity. William says they're looking for fidelity, and Jim dismisses it as being far-fetched. William puts that piece of paper down again, and we actually see William read it, and it's a transcript of the whole conversation that's been had between Jim and William. Jim starts to get really upset and asks about his sickness and how long it's been since his death. William tells him it's been 7 years, and Jim asks, I am not in California anymore, am I? To which William responds, if you can't tell, does it matter? Jim wants to leave and go back to his old life. William tells him that his wife has died, but assures him that his daughter is being looked after and his granddaughter is very smart and capable. And Jim can't leave just yet. Jim protests and starts to malfunction, starts to glitch, and William leaves the room and orders that Jim be terminated, so lit on fire. What were your thoughts when you saw that second appearance of Jim in the room?
That's when I was like, this is Westworld. I fucking loved this part. It was great. That realization and the way they connected everything together was amazing, man. I don't want to jump ahead because the third scene in the sequence is my favorite of the episode, but this scene really did it for me. Very well done and constructed. Again, his acting there was perfect. It's kind of crazy to me that they incinerate the entire room.
Yeah, wasteful.
By the end of the scene, that's all I could think about.
Yeah.
So wasteful.
Yeah, but really well done. What did y'all think?
I was pleased.
Yeah.
I thought it was great. Like that, the revelation that somehow they put his brain or cloned his consciousness or something into a body, and they're using him as like the beta test, the guinea pig, to figure out the kinks in the technology. I thought it was like mind blowing. I didn't think it would go there, but you were totally right that was like a direction that they were going.
Well, did you notice? Did you come to that realization, Sonny, when he read it? When you read the paper, like?
Oh yeah.
Or did you suspect that in the opening scene?
In the opening scene, I had the thought that I was like, oh, you know what? It's going to be the conversation, right? Because that's just like they just set up the conversation in that way. But even then, I didn't make the conclusion that he was like a half bot. I thought it was like Alzheimer's, and so this was just merely a power play for William to take him out of power, or like force him to cede control. Oh yeah, so that was part of it. I thought actually originally that the papers were just like secession papers, and that later they were going to reveal that no, you're not fit to run the company. But yeah, never anticipated the whole Delos like a bot connection, which I thought was crazy.
Yeah, I was kind of in that boat too. I mean, you suspect it because it is Westworld, but yeah, I mean, yeah, when he read that, it was just one of those moments, just like you said, Dakash. Like I had a huge smile on my face when we saw him on the exercise bike. I was like, yes, this is awesome. Like exactly, This is Westworld. But I also noted William's face is kind of all over the map in the scene. I don't know if you noticed, but he seems confused, amused, and concerned, like all during the scene. And I was really questioning that because I was like, yeah, is this a power play? Because he's kind of smiling. And when he starts to malfunction, he smiles a little bit. And it's like, is that a concerned smile? Is that just like, yeah, fuck this guy? Like it is kind of a power play. Like I'm taking over your business and this is kind of what you're reduced to, this malfunctioning robot. But I think it kind of gets explained and gets enlightened in the next time we see these two together. But yeah, for me, that stuck out so much. And it's just his face was everywhere. I didn't know if it was deliberate or not. I don't know if you guys noticed.
No, I mean, kind of, but to your point, like this is the point in the show where I actually really started respecting this actor. He was just so for me, but like his performance here throughout this episode really made me appreciate his acting chops. I'm talking about William, or the Man in Black. He did a fucking amazing job in every of the scenes that he was in. He just killed it this episode. So yeah, I'm really glad you pointed that out, Jason, but that's very subtle and it kind of pushed me to my conclusion of how good of an actor this guy really is.
It's like he's more confident when he's in these scenes. And he's like a confident, capable dude. This is a titan of industry.
Well,
versus
this is the
William
first
we were
time I
introduced
think he as an actor has been put in a position because he's always playing some sort of like weird nerd or like some sort of hacker or like some psychotic dude just because of I don't know facial features or whatever he is. But he was able to pull out that confident like CEO role and like a guy that's really intrigued and trying to learn about a new technology. I don't know. You could just see it all with his expression.
But I kind of want to take the counterpoint and say that like his acting fits in with Dolores's acting and to a lesser degree Maeve's of just like acting that gives nothing away. So while like it's talented and like while what they're expressing is like I think really rich and it shows how well how good of an actor they are or actors they are. At the same time, I feel like what they're saying is completely incongruent with what's on their face a lot of times to the point where you're just like, well, okay, so they're just not, they don't want to tell me too much. They only want to tell me what they're saying, but not like anything else that I can get from it, which makes the show really interesting and at a lot of times just really captivating. But it's, for me right now, very frustrating.
I mean, it's excusable in Dolores' character, right? She's a robot. So it's like
yeah, right.
Kinda,
So you can say that to a certain degree.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, all right. So then we move on to the next scene where we see the Confederados unpacking the guns and the nitroglycerin that they found, the one that the Man in Black gave away. The leader then challenges the bartender to walk 12 paces with a shot glass full of nitro on his palms. The Man in Black then just looks really disturbed when he shoots and kills him. The woman from the previous scenes asked one of the Locotal captives where they're going. She says it's the Locotal woman says they're taking them to the first of them that will decide their fate. The prisoners are forced to bow in front of this man who says in the language, "Release yourself of this burden." The woman somehow escapes, and a native grabs and holds Ashley and holds a knife to his neck, while another one comes and says quietly into his ear, "You live only as long as the last person who remembers you." Releases the knife, and Ashley suddenly finds himself totally alone. I guess, I mean, this is kind of a good breaking point in the episode. So, I mean, what I liked about this scene was just not knowing what the fuck's happening here, which to me I kind of liked that at this point of the episode.
Yeah.
It's just
what's going on? Why the guests being spared now? What's the change?
I don't think, I mean, they're not guests. That's what I thought was interesting, because we see this couple arguing, like right before they think that they're about to die. We see this woman screaming to her husband. She's like, "We're about to die because of your fucking fantasies." And she's pissed because they're about to die, right?
What?
And we see that couple in season 1 too. We've seen them around town.
No way.
Yeah, we've seen them. And the husband's actually a guy, I don't know if you remember in season 1, Hector gets introduced and Lee, the writer, is showing off this new narrative of Hector, and he's going to give this really amazing speech. And before he finishes the speech, this guy comes and just shoots Hector in the back of the head.
Oh, and it was this guy. Okay.
It's that guy. It's that couple. So we've seen him before, and then we see him like disappear. And so now it's just,
so they are guests.
I think they're hosts, and I think they're hosts pretending to be guests. And what confirms that to me is she, this woman in the last episode, in the opener, she's questioning that guy, whether or not he's a guest or a host. And I think that she knows that there's hosts that pretend to be guests, that like blend in with guests.
Okay, she meaning William's daughter.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yeah, but you're saying this couple you think are hosts?
I think they're hosts, and I think they've been there, and they play random narratives. So I think like the blending of like hosts and guests, like that was what was really interesting of a takeaway for me from this scene. Was just, where the hell did they go?
Wait, so what makes you think that though?
Just because of that interaction, remember with the guy and her from the last episode, the opening scene, and she's kind of questioning his reality and questioning whether he's.
I get that. No, I'm asking why these two particular people you think are hosts.
Because they disappear. Everyone disappeared, including like the Locotal natives. Everyone was gone. So it was like all the hosts. I'm assuming all the hosts just disappeared somehow. And now, like, Ashley's left alone. Unless there's, like, a mind... Like, Ashley's going through some shit. Unless Ashley's a host, too, and he's glitching. But, it was just such a... It was an eerie scene.
I don't really understand your logic or reasoning on that.
I don't know.
Why they're guests?
Why they're hosts?
Yeah,
why they're hosts?
Yeah.
Yeah, just 'cause, like, they disappeared in that scene. And, again, like, the woman was, like, questioning what looked like to be a guest and was questioning whether or not he was a host, and shot him to see if he was a host or not. So I think like she knows, because she's William's daughter, like she knows that there's like hosts among the guests that are pretending to be guests.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Because when she escapes, she's with the people that you said she didn't want to figure out whether they only kill hosts or hosts and people.
Right, remember? Yeah.
Yeah, so you're saying when she escapes, and then the fact that they disappear, that suggests that they're hosts and that she knew, which is why she escaped.
I don't know if she knew or not. I mean, she knows that the Indian tribes are. I mean, she's.
Then I'm definitely not following your logic.
All right, we'll move on then.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So the next scene, we see Bernard, and he wakes up in the lab. Elsie shows him some code that's written in an encryption she said she's never seen before. Bernard says it's like the encryption that he saw in Abernathy's head, and that it references a database bigger than any in the park. He has another flashback of building some red device, and he tells Elsie that they were building something else here with different code.
Ford's consciousness.
Yeah, that's what I felt too.
Then they suddenly hear a beating at this door at the back of the lab, and Bernard just falls back into another vision. Then we see the Confederado men continue to terrorize the town. The leader talks at the bar with the man in black, and he pours a glass of nitro and starts dancing with Lawrence's wife. They also start playing the music that they played when the man in black was also dancing with Lawrence's wife before he shot her. And he tells his wife to go give the glass to Lawrence. When he does it, or as he's doing this, he's talking about death and how he's serving death well, and he has this relationship with death. The man in black then sees images of all the families crying, all the townspeople crying. He sees images of his own wife drowned in a bathtub, and looks at this leader and says that death is always true. He says that you haven't known a true thing all your life. You think you know death, but you don't. You didn't recognize him sitting across the table. Then he kills the man. Again, Man in Black is this favorite storyline of this season. So I want to hear what you guys thought of that little exchange.
Ed Harris is born for westerns, man.
Yeah.
This dude is the stereotypical badass western shooter. Everything he says, everything he does is badass. The entire shootout scene is the type of action set pieces I want to see some Westworld. None of the bullshit we saw in episode 2, or was that last episode? Episode 3.
Yeah, the battle scene.
Yeah, with the big fort scene. Don't give me any of that shitty set pieces. Give me more of this stuff. This is perfect. This is amazing. And his dialogue throughout the entire scene was done so well, and it was like eerie to a point. He seemed so godlike in my mind at that moment. It was perfect.
I really dislike the main Confederado. And I actually don't really care for his performance. So I was so happy to not only listen to Ed Harris, put him in his place, like denigrate him for being a host and not even knowing like what he doesn't know, and then blows him up. I thought was just so pleasing. It was so great.
And he lets Lawrence do it, right? He lets Lawrence.
Yeah.
Lets Lawrence. He shoves a nitro in his mouth, makes him swallow it.
Amazing.
The scene, besides the amazing dialogue, it was just so well shot too. I thought, like the way they put it all together, and when he's kind of panning over the room and he's seeing all the townspeople crying and Lawrence's family crying. It's like that moment he decides like this is it. Like he's talking. Remember, he told Lawrence this is a chance to be the men they could have been. This is his chance to start setting things right. And I think it's like in that moment you can feel it. He's contemplating, deciding, and he's like, I'm gonna take action. I'm gonna take and save this town. And I loved the whole buildup. It was awesome. Like you're clapping and cheering at the end because like fuck that leader, and like the Man in Black is just amazing.
No, it's awesome because like the last 30 years he's chosen to be a black hat.
Yeah,
and this is maybe his first legitimate moment of like choosing to be a pure white hat. Like he knows none of this shit matters, right? He knows that they will die the same as him. But that doesn't make them any more alive to a certain degree, right? But even in watching them and knowing that they're fake and watching them like think they're real, he just now he has the choice and the opportunity to choose to be someone different than who he was throughout the show. And I thought him making that choice, like you said, you could see him contemplating it. And yeah, it was so pleasing just to see him take on a different role in the show. He doesn't have to be the baddie.
But going, like you said, he's like kind of being a white hat in the scene. He still delivers that like really villainous dialogue where he's just like, I love how he's like, you haven't known a true thing your whole life.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't know death because he never has died. He's come back every time. You know, and I love like you've been staring at death across the table. Like I just love the whole like you're looking at him, bitch. And then when he shoves the nitro down his mouth, I remember he says like, "Don't worry, I'm looking down at you now."
Yeah. Like definitely.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, that was so good.
What a hard ass.
And to your point, Jason, the perspective of the shooting scene was perfect. Like you had an understanding of where all the combatants were in relation to where he was, and it was filmed so brilliantly to where like you knew the guy was around the corner, where he had to aim and shoot, and there's the way the camera followed Ed Harris, like you said, just brilliantly done. And it was like a nighttime shot too. So
yeah, in the rain
was perfect. It was beautifully done.
Well, when after he tells him, you know, I'm looking at you now, he walks over to Lawrence's wife and grabs. He walks over, grabs a gun, hands it to Lawrence, and then tells him to shoot it. That whole scene, it was one shot. There was like one really prolonged shot that was just so beautiful, and the way that they move the camera, it exposes all the characters. Yeah, that really struck me in this scene. Beautiful. And Ed Harris, you're right, man. What a badass. All right, so next we see Jim once again pouring cream into his coffee. A man appears on screen this time and tells him he has a visitor. It's William again, but it's an older version of William. Jim immediately asks, "Who the fuck are you?" William says it's been a long time, and Jim replies, "William, my boy." Jim is a little confused and immediately says, "I take it I didn't recover." They pour the whiskey, and William again says it's too early for him. Jim again says that he wants out. William immediately denies his request. Jim again starts to malfunction, and William says that he's hitting what they call a cognitive plateau that they always hit with him. His mind is rejecting reality and rejecting himself. He says it's the 149th time that they've tried to bring Jim back, and he begins to sip the whiskey and says he's not so sure he wants to bring Jim back anymore, and that it's not good to have people live forever. And he tells Jim that Juliet killed herself and says that the world would possibly be a better place without both of them. Jim starts to scream for Logan, and William tells him that Logan overdosed a long time ago, and he leaves Jim alone in his room screaming and decides not to terminate him this time, and he closes the lab door behind him. All right, so again, this is the kind of the third and final time we see these two here. What did you think was really happening at this moment, or what did you think of him not terminating Jim?
Perfect ending to the two scenes we already saw. I loved the description of how his mind was rejecting the reality of the situation. That was the best description. That is this show, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this scene, and that made it completely for me. The explanation of why his mind was rejecting everything. It's like, you know, it's like your brain's not accepting this body. I love that, and I just loved how he wanted to see. He was like ruthless at this point. He's like, who cares? 149 times. Let's just see how long it takes to degrade at this point, at this stage. But you could just see William is kind of at this point. It's an experiment. There's no more relationship with this man who is his father-in-law. This is just another attempt to a failed experiment over and over and over. You know what I mean? So this was it was a perfect cap to the third scene for this sequence of scenes, right, throughout the episode. Brilliantly done.
Well, I agree with everything you said about the scene itself, but my biggest issue with it is like when a character switches their motivation, I feel like there ought to be a journey like shown. Otherwise, when they switch, it feels kind of cheap. And I think this is the kind of show where even if there was more to show about his journey and like coming to this perspective, like that they'll probably show it in flashbacks and stuff. But I think the like juxtaposition of him just 2 episodes ago wanting to buy up the thing and convincing Jim that this is the future and stuff like that, to showing us a scene just 2 episodes later that I'm over this. Like that feels kind of like I don't know. It feels a little cheap. I could be like disregarding maybe more of his own story from season 1 that I just don't remember because I haven't seen it recently. But that's just how I felt about it. But
I mean, doesn't the fact that they show you how much time has passed in between each of those scenes kind of show you cheapen it less for you? Because he's still attempting, right?
Yeah, to a certain degree. Sure. It's better than only like a week having passed or a month or whatever, in Showtime. But
I
in
don't
the
know.
end, like,
sorry.
No, go ahead. No, that was my point. Yeah.
It implies that it has been a long time, right? He says it's been a long time, and he tells him Juliet, his wife, has committed suicide. And if we remember from season 1, the whole reason he went back to the park was to find like that ruthlessness in him after his wife committed suicide. He was told by his daughter that he was a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And so this looks like it's like right before he goes back into the park. So I feel like this is kind of the Man in Black talking here. This is him coming back, giving his piece to Jim, telling him, shit went sour. And like, we're done. My wife's done. Like, it's done. Like, I think he feels his own mortality too. And is just deciding like, maybe we shouldn't be immortal. I think there's something going on in the Man in Black's psyche that like caused him to go back to the park, and we're kind of seeing it, the beginning of it here.
So you think this scene takes place in the like 1 year prior to coming back to the park? That takes place. The scene takes place before he like kills Maeve and like has that realization.
Yeah.
You think so? Okay. Well, 1 year before season 1.
Yeah.
Okay. I saw him dressed nice, so I assumed he was going to the party. So I thought that this is right before the dinner party, which I think is pseudo confirmed by the following scene, because I guess it's not really.
Yeah, because the gap would be the Asian guy wouldn't be sitting there for a year dead. His body looked fairly fresh.
Yeah,
that's true.
So, and that's another point is the connection to this room to where Ford asked Bernard to come grab something from the lab that's just sitting right outside. So I really want to know what the connection is now between Ford and this Delos experiment, because
Ford this particular lab.
Yeah, Ford has to have a hand in all of this.
Yeah.
Or he's got to be ahead of them, Like he's got to know something that they don't,
Right.
Like they're so this close. It's like God himself has already figured it out. Obviously, like if these Cretans are this close.
Mm-hmm. So the way I think about it is that if this does take place at the end of his tour through Westworld until shit goes down, like I'm just a little confused why it took 30 years plus this whole last year when he was just being a complete asshole in the park to really come to the realization that this is all just, bullshit. Or it could be because after he completes the maze and he realizes it's not for him, he's just like, okay, I'm done with this kind of thing. So regardless, though, I kind of wish there was more behind that.
I think there might be. I mean, the show.
I hope so.
Really
it's an interesting juxtaposition from the scene before too, right? The scene before he's being like very benevolent and like selfless, taking a risk to save his family, and then in the next scene he's basically telling his father-in-law, like, I'm done bringing you back. I just think it was an interesting choice of scenes too.
Well, so it's almost like 3 reversals, right?
Right.
He doesn't care. He cares about the park, then he doesn't care, and has Jim just like not actually terminated, and then now he cares about the park again. So yeah.
Also, called it about Logan. Knew he'd overdose.
Yeah. But I'm curious if that's the truth too, or if that's the whole truth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
That could always be an extra plot point, right? Down the line.
But they could easily write him off. Who knows? All right, so moving on to the final scene here, or the final couple scenes. Sorry, Elsie and Bernard walk through that door that we saw William just close, and we see the room with Jim, and it's completely broken and full of red lights. And they decide to enter the room. They find a dead technician in that room, and Elsie finds Jim very creepily on the exercise bike, completely covered in blood. He starts to attack Elsie, and Bernard saves her. As he's saving her, he kind of knocks Jim out, and Jim tells Bernard, he says, they said there were 2 fathers, one above, one below. They lied. There was only ever the devil, and when you look up from the bottom, it was just his reflection laughing back down at you. Before they terminate Jim, he says for the last time, if you aim to cheat the devil, you owe him at least an offering. Bernard reveals to Elsie that that man was James Delos, and that Ford had him print a control unit for another human. He doesn't remember who it is. Elsie and Bernard set out to find out who that person was. And then Bernard flashes back again, seeing him pull out that red sphere, that red device that had been building the last few flashbacks. And him and the drones kill all the technicians that we've seen just laying dead in this lab. Elsie then asks if everything's okay, and Bernard responds, everything's fine. And they keep walking. And then this final little scene. At the end, we see the man in black packing up to leave with Lawrence. And then Lawrence's daughter speaks to the man in black, and she calls him William and says that she remembers who he is. And this one good deed doesn't erase what he did. He tells her that he's going to play the game to the bone. And she tells him that he doesn't understand the real game that they're playing. He says, if you're looking forward, you're looking in the wrong direction. And then we see the man in black ride off with Lawrence, and they run into the woman who says, hi, Dad. So we get the reveal. That whole woman, the woman this whole time was the man in black's daughter.
So,
and that's the end. Yeah. So
back to the Bernard scene. I think we can split this up into 3 different parts here. But visually, that whole scene was really nicely done, right? You guys agree with the flashbacks? Bernard just standing there, kind of visualizing everything that was happening. I love the visualization of the orb being created. I thought that was beautifully done. And the complete savagery of all of those humanoid hosts was just brutal to watch. They literally just throw them through a metal spike, smash their heads open, and then immediately commit suicide. Just by
except for one.
Knife. Yeah,
right. except for the one that Elsie shoots.
Yeah.
Just adding more to this Bernard distrust.
Exactly.
Vampire. Yeah.
Exactly. And that is where I was like, Elsie, you need to grab that gun ASAP, because he looks confused. He doesn't know. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that look was him confused it was him being confused at where he was in time. Because I think it's
that's
so
just
like...
his face. That's what he looks like. In every scene. He just looks like, what the fuck is going on?
Right? Yeah.
That is probably what that's what he said earlier in the episode, is this now. So he's obviously, all these flashbacks, he can't place them in time.
You don't trust him?
No.
No, not at all.
I don't trust him either.
Yeah, well, especially because she has him promise that he won't lie or hurt her. And the first fucking words out of his mouth is a goddamn lie.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I don't understand her trust. It's absolutely insane to me.
He knocked her out, right?
Yeah.
He's responsible for her.
Up in a cave.
Yeah.
But she did grab the iPad-looking device, so she might have some control over him, because when she injected that cortex fluid or whatever, I think she might have, I don't know if she could have put up some controls over him to limit him from being violent against her. I mean, if she's smart enough, she should have done that.
Yeah.
Well, I have a feeling that we're going to watch Elsie die again this season. And then
come back in season 3?
No resurrections.
I wouldn't. Unless she's a host this whole time too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And jumping forward, I mean, we just see Ford again. His fingerprints are everywhere, just playing more and more games. That was the biggest takeaway. And for some reason, I thought that scene with William's daughter was really emotional. It completely caught me off guard, and I really enjoyed it. The shot of them all riding out through the desert, and then her coming up in the dust. I was like, damn, that got to me a little bit. I really like that scene. I have no idea why though.
It was like kind of cheesy in the best way, you know.
Exactly.
It made you smile, and like immediately I was like, God damn, yeah. Why didn't I put those pieces together? She doesn't want to leave because she's looking for him. You know, like why? Like she knows everything about the park. It's like, well, duh. How did we not guess that?
And on top of everything we've seen about her, of course, she's his daughter. She's a badass. She escaped the fucking tiger. She's a boss. Only
and escaped natives. Yeah, dude. She's Sure. And again, like earlier in the show, you know, I referenced, you know, William tells Jim, your granddaughter is smart and capable. It's like, but yeah, like we're seeing the granddaughter, like they're telling the story of the granddaughter. You know, it was like they do that so beautifully. That way, when there is that reveal, it feels so familiar. You know, everything feels so familiar.
Yeah.
What about the final scene with Jim? And what did you think of his quote about the two fathers and it's the devil to Bernard?
I thought the quote was really interesting, but I'm having trouble putting it into the context of the show. Like what made him think that and say
Yeah.
that. But I really like the idea expressed.
Do you have the exact quote, Jason?
Yeah, he says, they said there were two fathers, one above, one below. They lied. There was only ever the devil, and when you look up from the bottom, it was just his reflection laughing back down at you.
Interesting. I need to think about that.
Yeah.
That's just way above my head.
But I mean, and that ties into like his famous quote, if you aim to cheat the devil, you owe him at least an offering. So there's some obsession with the devil. It's something very weird and interesting with the devil in this character.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna.
And it's a dead character.
Answer choice, as I've stuck to all 4 episodes of our podcast. It has something to do with Ford.
Yeah, it's worth.
Answer choice C, Ford. I'll go with that.
Wait, maybe it's like Arnold and Ford were supposed to be the two fathers, but there was only one, and it's the devil. So he's referring to either Arnold or Ford that like sought to destroy hosts or something.
Oh,
Maybe
so that's
those
an
are the two
interesting idea.
fathers.
So maybe, Ford is the devil,
Mhm.
and his reflection is just Arnold. Or
Yeah. And it's because he created Bernard.
Dude, I really hope
Or
they bring
something
back
like that.
Hopkins for one episode, at least one episode. I want to see him on the show again, just to see his acting. God, I fucking love Hopkins.
Who?
Anthony
Which
Hopkins?
one?
Ford.
Oh, Anthony Hopkins. Yeah.
I would love to see him come back.
Yeah, I would love to have it revealed that, they kept him on set a secret or something.
Yeah.
That he's in the season, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to live through proxy,
Mhm.
all of Ford's interactions in his narrative.
Based on us just seeing all of these other hosts talking, Ford talking through these hosts and learning more about this expansive code and network, I'm even more convinced that his consciousness is alive, and they're trying to put it into a host's body.
Oh yeah, actually, I was going to say, I think what Bernard printed was Ford's consciousness.
Consciousness, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking, who else could it be though, right?
Yeah.
Who else? Like, I was thinking, what if it was Arnold? What if there was like they threw a wild card and said like somehow Bernard is printing Arnold's code. Maybe he's
Or his own. Yeah.
the intention is to merge this version of Bernard with Arnold's consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then that leads me to believe that there's someone else's consciousness hidden in Abernathy. So if that's the case, it has to be Abernathy. Might have Ford or Arnold, and Bernard either grabbed a Ford or Arnold copy that he has.
Well, it's like if it was Arnold, Bernard looking at it and not knowing or remembering who or what it is, it could be like, well, it's himself. It's like the protection that they afford them. So it doesn't look like anything to me.
Right.
He thinks he's seeing encrypted data when it's probably real clear exactly what.
Yeah, it's exactly.
Oh my God, that'd be crazy.
I think the only reason why that I don't think is the case is that when Catherine, keep forgetting her name, but when she puts stuff into Abernathy, it's all software. I think it's just all data. So I don't think that consciousness ball or whatever, is in Abernathy.
Which is distinctly different than the consciousness ball we saw get pulled off the native's head.
Yeah.
In episode 1, correct? That was
Right.
like a white orb.
And they were big. There was like a Pokeball and it was big.
It seemed like biological a little bit, in my opinion.
Well, I think they have like some kind of cerebrospinal fluid that probably has some bio basis in it.
Okay.
My guess is that consciousness ball is what's inside those white light bulb orbs. Also, it's kind of interesting that they do look like light bulbs, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like you got light bulbs in your head.
Idea.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure the consciousness balls are printed per like host or fake consciousness or whatever, and then that's what lives inside that little housing, which lives inside the skull. Yeah, that's my guess.
I was also thinking about Jim's quote, if you aim to cheat the devil, you owe him an offering. I was trying to figure out, what do you think that might mean? And my theory was, or my question was, cheating the devil. So is he referring to cheating death?
Yeah.
And the offering, is that the people that have to die in order to achieve that immortality? Or is it the fact that you have to die in order to become like code, basically, in order to become immortal? So is that the offering? Is the offering yourself? If you want to cheat death, you have to give yourself to death.
You have to offer a part of yourself. It seems like you never get 100% of yourself back. There's going to be something missing, right? That's what we've seen from Jim's reiterations each single time. I think that's offering. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I interpreted it a different way. I think he's referring to himself as the devil and just generally saying like, if you're trying to cheat me, you know, the baddest ass motherfucker, you at least should be offering something. Which is why, like, but the conversation never gets past that, right?
No.
William always like he gives him the paper or like just goes into the interview or whatever.
Yeah, it could have been like an affect of his when he was a businessman. That was like something he would say to his business partners, you know.
And precisely, that's where I'm at. You know?
Who releases Jim and allows him to wreak havoc in that in his cage? Like, how did the Asian security guard die? Like, who lets him out?
Oh, I think maybe those were other hosts that killed those people, but it's also unclear, right?
Right.
I interpreted that as like the general host havoc that was created after they became kind of self-aware or like liberated. But it's also a good question because how would hosts get into that room to kill those people in the first place?
Maybe he was like malfunctioning and the technician went in there to check on him and Jim just killed him.
Yeah, but then he ended up back in the cage, right?
Because the door was closed too. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So it's unclear.
That was a cool reveal. Whenever William was telling Jim this is 149th time, and then they go to the panel and it says 149. And you're like, oh shit! That was a really cool reveal in that scene.
Right. And I think it's even more clear now that they're taking DNA from guests and creating hosts with that. That's been laid out completely for us again, reiterated to us again.
Mm-hmm.
What's so funny is when we talked about it, or when you first brought it up, Akash, like. We kind of laughed at it a little bit, like just collectively. We were just kind of shooting the shit and throwing out ideas. And it's funny that it seemed kind of like weird and far-fetched. And I think it was also hopeful because we weren't like in the direction the season was going. So we're like, all right, that would be cool. That would just be cool. And that's kind of how we came up. It's turning out to be true. And it's kind of cool because they're, I think, doing it good justice. Like, I think if they explain the reasoning why and the pursuit of immortality a little bit more, the reason why, how did this come about? How did this notion come about? That's what I'm looking forward to hearing about or learning.
My big skepticism that was the way that they were going. Not just skepticism, my like kind of hesitation. I kind of didn't want it to go that way is just because I couldn't realize like, and I still can't, like how they would explain the actual genuine utility of doing something like that without the guest knowledge. Right. Like short of trying to create better hosts or more accurate hosts or something like that, to put into the park. Dude, like I'm unclear.
Mean, it's pretty fairly. I mean, we see season 1 episode when a lot of these guests are coming in here to have like wild orgies. So there's a lot of DNA there to gather. Right.
Right.
Like that's the quickest way.
Just DNA everywhere on the walls, on the bed, just everywhere. Yeah.
Inside the host.
Well, no, but what I'm saying is like, why do any of that? Unless they're either trying to clone the guests with their permission, which I don't think is the case, or they're trying to clone the guests to be hosts in the park, which I also don't think is the case. And so between those two things, like I don't know why else they'd be doing that, except for something related to blackmail or extortion or whatever.
Financial gain for the really, really wealthy that can afford to live forever.
I mean, I originally theorized just to have unique hosts, right? Just because I don't know how hard it is to code a unique human being without getting samples from real life people. So it's probably the easier way.
It's just cool. If season 1 was about like attaining consciousness, and season 2, hopefully they're continuing the storyline and it's going to be really about like immortality, or the ambiguity of immortality. I mean, again, like to summarize our thoughts on this episode, I just thought it was really, really interesting, and I didn't ask any stupid questions about, robot anatomy this time. I was like focused on the episode and really, really interested. So, I mean, I hope this is the direction they go. And they obviously got to devote an episode to Dolores and Maeve now. So I'm guessing that this next episode is going to be, our two ladies, Maeve and Dolores.
I cannot tell you how happy I was to not see Dolores this episode. Fresh and breath. It really was, right? I mean, no exaggeration. It just felt the story just felt more complex. It felt like Westworld rather than some sort of weird, like robotic, cultish acting that I don't really enjoy at all.
It's like the writers didn't know what to do with her. or just kind of like they weren't expecting a season 2 and they ended it and they're like, oh shit, what do we do with her now?
Right.
She just killed Ford. How do we backstep our way out of this?
Yeah, I usually don't watch previews, but I saw the end of this episode, and I'm really excited for the next episode. I think Hiroyuki Sanada is going to be on there, and he's one of my favorite Japanese actors. Like, I think the dude's a boss. Like, every action role he plays, I'm, like, fully engrossed in. Love the dude, so I'm really excited to see him on screen.
Same.
What's his name?
Hiroyuki Sanada.
Sanada.
I forget what stuff he's in, but I've loved him in pretty much everything I've seen.
Oh yeah, he's great.
He's
Last Samurai. He was
yeah.
He's pretty much like in every Western movie. He's the main Japanese like lead actor. He was in Lost as well. You probably remember from there.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't see the post-script. So does it look like it's gonna be a lot of? Well, I mean,
yeah.
If he's in it,
next
they're gonna
episode is completely dedicated to Japanese world and Maeve. So
sweet.
He was also in Wolverine. So if you remember from that,
47 Ronin.
A ton of probably more Japanese things than American stuff, but really good actor.
So yeah, I'm excited. Season 5 or episode 5.
Same here, man. Any final thoughts, Cuts?
No, I think that's it.
Wrap it up.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening. That was again episode 4, the riddle of the Sphinx. Gosh, can you do all the outro stuff?
Yeah. Catch us on nocampspodcast.podbean.com and on Twitter at nocampspodcast. I'm now on Twitter at acash0992. Sunny
_Gunna.
And you can catch Sunny only on this podcast, so tune in. I mean, Jason only on this podcast, so
exclusive content.
Exclusive. Yeah. We got him on contract. All right, guys. We'll see y'all next week. We will do an episode of Infinity War in between as well, so tune in for our thoughts. All right. Peace.
Later.
Bye.